Francis, and welcome to Sales Code. In my program, what I'd like to do is in the next 30 days double your sales results. Now, I know that's a big claim, but I believe it to be true. That if you simply follow my tried, tested, proven techniques, over the next 30 days and apply them, through the Sales Code manual, through the audio cassettes or CDs, through the videos, and certainly through the 30-day plan, if you implement the strategies I'm going to teach you over the next several hours, then you can get to doubling your sales results and getting a better close ratio with folks. And in this program, we're going to talk about a number of different things. We're going to talk about selling principles. We're going to talk about some general selling principles that you should use as a system for success. We're also going to talk about a system. We're actually going to talk about a process where you do certain things in a certain order to get a certain result. We're going to use the 7 steps to success. We're also going to talk a little bit, not only about a systematic approach to selling, but some of the key things that, we need to do in terms of hidden motivation. I believe there's kind of 4 people in the world, 4 types of people in the world. Each one of them has a primary motivation value, and if we know what that primary motivation value is, we can sell to them more effectively. For example, there's a spade personality, and they're kind of a driver type of personality. They're very achievement-driven, very goal-driven, very task-driven. And if we know what motivates them, what their number one value is, and we can often get clues to that by the environment that they're in, visual clues or auditory clues, then we can sell to them more effectively. There's 3 other styles that we can also talk to with respect to different approaches. Over the course of these next several hours, whether it's on video or audio or in the workbooks, I'm going to teach you over 100 different sales techniques or strategies that you can use and implement over the next 30 days to make a major difference in terms of your selling. We're going to talk about language patterns. We're going to talk about 25 or 30 odd language patterns that have influence. They're language patterns that are simple, easy to learn, but they're also pretty dramatic in terms of their effect. And something simple can have a dramatic effect if it's applied over time. We're going to talk about closing statements and closing stories. I'm going to give you the 12 to 15 of the best closing statements or stories that I know, with examples and how to use them, and even some of the stories that you can actually steal from me and use automatically in the next 30 days to improve your sales and your performance. We'll talk about objections and dealing with objections and some techniques to get rid of that. We'll also talk a little bit about fear. When I say that, a lot of salespeople are afraid to ask for the order. So we're going to talk about that kind of as an objection for ourselves. When I think about selling and I think about salespeople, I think that a salesperson, has to have key characteristics of success. Now, I've spent a lot of time with some of the best salespeople in the world. I'm talking about the 1%, the 1% that are making 200, 300, 500,000, even $1 million from the selling profession. You've got to have a pretty good skill set to earn $1 million a year in terms of selling for a living. When I've met those people and talked to those people and interviewed those people and actually trained a lot of those people, I found that there's kind of 6 characteristics that they have in common. First, they're good communicators. Now, when I say good communicator, I don't mean they're perfect. I don't mean that they don't make mistakes. I don't mean that they flub words. I just mean that they're good in terms of getting a response in other people, and I think that is the key to communication. It kind of reminds me of Jung when he said that, when you have 2 personalities meeting, it's like 2 chemicals. Those 2 chemicals, can ignite each other, change each other, if they're the right chemicals. And what we want to do is we want to bring the right chemical combination of our words and our closing and our presentation to ignite that other person into action and motivate them to take a step forward. And to do that, you really have to be a good communicator. Now, communication is not just pitching. It's not just presentation. It's understanding about other people. It's also asking the right questions at the right time. It's also reading the body language of individuals, which is all part of communication. We also have to be a really good psychologist. What I mean by that is you have to understand what other people are all about. If you understand what other people are all about, what motivates them, what inspires them, what their dreams are, what their fears are, then we can, as part of that, motivate them or influence them in our direction. We also need to understand that there are a whole series of subconscious things going on with people which holds them back from making a decision. Maybe they had bad experiences with salespeople in the past. If that's the case, maybe they've grouped you into that group, and what you need to do is to get out of that group by some sort of technique, so that you're not grouped in with those folks. We have to be a problem solver. I think that part of selling is really uncovering needs, but part of selling is also uncovering their major problems. Tony Robbins says it by saying, we got to wound people or find out what their wounds are so that we can fix their wounds. And I kind of believe that to be true. We need to make sure we understand what their problems are, so that we can solve them. Certainly that is the case with the apathetic or the passive kind of client. With the passive kind of client, the apathetic kind of client, who's not positively responding to them, you got to bring out a big stick, a big spear, and stab him a little bit and wound him a little bit about what his problems are. And if you do that, what will happen is then he's going to start to open up a little bit and start to listen to you. So we've got to be able to do that by, finding out what their problems are, wounding them a little bit, and then being the solver, the fixer for that problem. I think selling is a key in terms of being flexible. You've got to be flexible, and you've got to be able to change direction in a heartbeat, because you never know where that call may go. Whether it's a face-to-face presentation or a telemarketing call, or whether you're talking to 10 people or 100 people, things happen, and you have to be prepared to deal with those kinds of things immediately. When you walk in the door, there's going to be 4 types of people in that chair, and you better be prepared to be able to sell to all 4 of them. Whether that's the person that wants to like you, or whether that's the person that wants to be excited by you, or whether that's the person that wants to get a result or an action from you, a big reward, or whether that's the person that wants to understand the whole process, from A to Z. You've got to have the flexibility to be able to change your style to match their style, and also deal with situations that might pop up as you're going along. I think, the number one thing for most salespeople is they have to be an awesome closer. And in fact, that's the biggest challenge for a lot of folks. What they do is they're a great presenter. They have great presentations and pitches and language and how they proceed with their 45-minute presentation or whatever it is. And then they ask for the order at the end. And what they don't realize is that in closing, you have to use what I call the ABCs. And the ABC stands for always be closing. The moment you open your mouth, you've got to be closing. A great example is I do a lot of presentations from stage in front of groups of audiences from anywhere from 50 to 500. And people say, well, when do you start your close? And I usually say within 10 seconds of opening. And they say, well, what do you mean by that? How can you do that? Well, most people, when they introduce themselves, what they do is they introduce themselves, their accolades, what they've done, what makes them the great expert, what makes them whatever. I don't. When I open, I say, hey, my name's Jim Francis. The reason I'm standing in front of you was because, I spent $81,000 on books, tapes, and education, and I had a great mentor. In that first 60 seconds, I've let the people know that mentorship is okay, buying education is okay, and guess what? I'm in the education business, so what do you think I'm going to sell them a little bit later on? So I've already opened the door within the first 60 seconds, and you need to do the same in your telemarketing calls, in your direct sales presentations face-to-face, and even in group settings. We've got to make sure that we're closing from the first minute. And one of the things for salespeople, too, is they really have to be good planners. The worst thing for most salespeople is that they don't spend enough time prospecting. They don't spend enough time closing the sale. So we really have to manage our time. In fact, there's a whole section in the workbook about time management, about getting rid of interruptions and what I call block time, blocking time for prospecting, blocking times for the sales call, blocking time for marketing and generation of leads, so that, we use the law of our averages in our favor, and we get to more face-to-face or telemarketing calls or presentations so we can sell more. When it comes down to it, basically in life there's kind of in selling there's kind of two major elements to a sale. And I kind of think about it as a lever or a teeter-totter, and one of those things in the kids' playground. On one side you have value, and on the other side you have the negatives of your products or services. This might be objections or cost or whatever that might be. And our goal, just like the kid in the playground, is to make sure we put enough stuff on our side enough value on our side that it weighs down and it makes that other person take action or pop up into the air. So what that means is, basically we have to stack all the value on our side, and then we have to minimize the opposite side, so we get good leverage and get the person moving. So how do you do that? Well, leverage takes many different forms. And in terms of leverage, in terms of, moving people to take a step towards buying our products or service, it might be the value. It might be the value of our product and service. It might be something as simple as building rapport with that client so that they like you. Because if people like you, they tend to buy from you. And that means we might need to learn a little bit about matching their personalities. We might need to learn a little bit about, their personal motivation. And in fact, in this book, you're going to find that there's 10 top motivators. And if we sell to those 10 top motivators, we're more likely to get the person to buy our products or services. Now, most of you are thinking, well, I'm thinking about features and benefits. I'm thinking about, the on-off button and that kind of thing. I'm not. I know that 80% of all selling is emotional. And then what we do is we justify by logic. So we've got to tap those emotions. Yes, we do need to have some logic, no question. We need to show the person through trends or analysis, statistics, through steps, how logical it is to buy our product and services. We certainly need to meet their needs, their basic needs. But the thing that's going to drive them over the top, that's going to make sure that the sale falls in our favor, is really that emotional kind of element. We've got to link that to their values. It goes down to the 4 personality styles. We've got to show them how to gain information or get information. We've got to make sure our product is distinct and different from other people's products and services. In fact, you know what? We might have to go the extra mile. We might need to have 1 or 2 more distinctions, but we also might need to have 1 or 2 more incentives to drive them to take action today. So we'll talk a little bit about incentives during this course as well. And those incentives don't need to be something your company's doing. It might be just a little incentive you can do for the person. You've got to meet their desires, because I really believe people buy, logically, but they really buy because of their hidden desires. So we need to get a handle on what those desires might be, and what really motivates them to take action. When it comes to leverage, your questioning technique, your ability to question and use questions effectively, can be a major influencer. Now, when I say that, for one of the things we're going to use what we call test questions to find out if we're moving in the right direction. But more importantly, we're going to use test questions to get people to say yes. Because I know if people say yes, 10, 15, 20, 100 times during the course of an hour or 2 hours, that they're more likely to say yes to our product and services as we get down to the order form. In terms of the other side of the fence, in terms of the minimizing some of the negatives, we're going to have to learn how to kill objections, and we should do that right up front. So we'll talk a little bit about framing and reframing and killing objections. We certainly want to reduce the cost, to make it peanuts for them to take that step forward. We've got to get rid of some fears, guys. Most people are afraid to buy. So we have to let them buy. We have to get them over that fear of buying, whether it's fear of loss or fear of failure or whatever. We've got to get them over those fears. Many people, when they come in to see us face-to-face or retail or whatever it might be, they already have a set of beliefs that they're coming in with, whether or not that's, salesmen are all shysters, or whether that's, geez, I have a predetermined concept of what your product is. They have certain beliefs, and we need to make sure we get rid of those negative beliefs. One of those is that, most people try to delay the buying decision. Now, they try to delay the buying decision because they don't want to make a mistake, they're afraid, they don't want to lose money, whatever it is, but we've got to make sure we get them over those pieces and destroy those belief systems that they may have about our product or service, or even about their own buying behaviors. We've got to destroy the competition. Now, when I say destroy the competition, I don't mean, talk badly about the competition. What I mean is I want to create so much value on my product and service that the other selection isn't even remotely considered. We've got to remove it. We've got to remove indecision. We've got to remove indifference, apathy. We've got to create a sense of urgency to get people to take action today. And that all comes down in terms of strategies and techniques. Strategies, techniques that can make you a master salesperson. When I'm talking about strategies and techniques, I'm talking about your ability, to build rapport, your ability to sell emotionally, your ability to, sell to values and to needs and to eliminate some of the negative beliefs that are out there, whether that's negative beliefs of yourself or negative belief systems of others as well. In fact, I strongly believe one of the key strategies beginning is you want to focus on your client's needs, not your own. And unfortunately for most people, what they do is they go in there thinking about, I need the sale, I need the sale, I need the sale, and what they should be thinking is, I need to help this person. I really believe in win-win selling, so that means we need to focus on the client's situation first. And if nothing else, even if I don't get any money out of the deal, I want to make sure I look after that person. So focus on your client's needs first. Many people, what they do is they spend a lot of the time doing their sales presentation and not a lot of time listening to the other person. In fact, what I want you to do is to kind of reverse that tactic a little bit. I want you to do about 10 or 15% of the talking, certainly in the beginning stages, and let the other person, spill their guts as to what they want, what they're doing, and all those kinds of things. When it comes to that, if we can find out as much as we can about the other person's position, what they need in a product, what they need in terms of life, then we can sell to that person pretty easily. And in fact, I want you to find out what their dreams are. I want you to find out what their values are, their dreams are. I want you to kind of know their process or their process for buying. Because everybody has a process. Everybody has a system for buying. And it changes person by person. There are some common commonalities. There are some common pieces to the puzzle. But what we want to do is each person is kind of different, and we kind of need to know what each of those people are. So we need to find out kind of what their system is. Over this program, one of the things I'm going to ask you to do as well is to keep going back to your 30-day planner. Your 30-day planner is really to take some of these steps, some of these action steps, and apply them. And I call it the map. And it's really the treasure map. It's really literally how you can make more money in your future than your past, by using the map. So, as we're going through this workshop, pull that 30-day planner out. There's a whole list of things you can do over the next 30 days. But what I would encourage you to do is to add to it, to improve it, to add some of the techniques. And as I'm doing something on audio or video, or you're reading the workbook, make sure you write yourself a note and say, hey man, I need to take that and use that in terms of my plan for my 30-day plan for success in terms of doubling my sales results. So we'll talk about a couple of different strategies to get started. First of all, I believe in the master of selling, which means that you have to begin the process in terms of selling of believing in yourself. What I mean by believing in yourself is having positive expectations and positive belief systems. Many people, if you conceive, believe, you achieve. I do believe that, and the opposite is true as well. If you don't believe in yourself, then you're not going to be successful. And I often say a successful salesperson has two major elements. The first is competence, and the next is confidence. So you've got to have that confidence. And if you don't have that confidence, in terms of selling, you want to start with that first. You want to get a positive belief system, into your mind, into your process, so that you know what you're doing. And if that's an issue for you, by the way, what I'm going to ask you to do is actually go in the workbook immediately, and start taking a look at belief systems. I spent a lot of time doing NLP kind of activities, and NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, is often about, the ability to take belief systems and change them and improve them, and it's a lot of therapeutic kind of action. It's therapeutic in nature, but it's also, if you take that skill and use it for selling, it can be a great piece as well. So one of the things I'm going to ask you to do is maybe to drop onto page 46 in your main manual and take the closing test immediately, and see where your belief systems are, because you have to believe, you're a great salesman. The other thing is, man, you got to believe you got a great product. I trained thousands of salespeople. I was working in the telecommunications business, whether it's telemarketing, direct sales, or commercial sales. And I always found the same thing. I do training. They'd go out there in the marketplace, let's say my direct sales reps knocking door to door. Man, they would light the world on fire. For the first 30, 45, 60 days, they would rock the house. And then after about 60 or 90 days, their performance would suffer kind of dramatically. And what I found is, they go out in the marketplace believing in their product, believing in their system, and they just based on pure belief would sell. And then what starts to happen is you start hearing some negatives about your product, or there's some better products out there, or there's some objections, and all of a sudden your confidence is shaken a little bit, and you don't ask for the order as much as you did, or you don't believe in your product as much as you do. So one of the things we got to do is get rid of all the negative crap, and we walk into the sales call, we got to believe in ourselves. We got to believe we have the best product in the marketplace no matter what. Even if it has a couple of bugs, you got to be thinking that going in there. And just based on that positive belief, confidence in ourselves, confidence in our product, we can make a difference in terms of positive outcomes. You want to make sure you use affirmations. Quite often people will get kind of down about selling. And one of the things I'll say is, man, do the same things. If you think about a professional athlete, when that pitcher is getting ready to throw the pitch, he pretty much does the same things time over time to make that shot or take that pitch. So what we want to do is we kind of want to do the same things. I know when I was doing presentations to sales managers, going in to see them, when you're doing a presentation to a sales manager, who's supposed to be an expert in terms of selling, it's tough to have confidence going into that situation. You got to have a high degree of confidence, a high degree of skill. One of the things I would do is, I would listen to certain motivational music going into the sales presentation, prior to the sales presentation, and I would listen to comedies. So I'm in the right frame about enjoying life when I walk into that sales presentation, so that I'm doing, it's a form of affirmations, but I'm doing affirmations to keep myself motivated to go in there, right? So you got to eliminate that negative. You got to focus on the client. Spend, most of the time focusing on, in fact, I like to open with a big, bold statement, get that big, bold statement out of the thing, and then go right into some questions, and make sure I'm using open probe questions, which are, who, where, when, how kind of questions, to find out what their sales process is. And when I find out what their sales process is, uncover what some of their needs are, what some of their values, then I start to bring in my sales presentation. But I'm going to focus on the client first. I'm going to sell with emotion. I'm going to be excited if they're excited. I'm going to match their personalities and their styles, right? So you want to use that piece as an influence with respect to going into the sales call. One of the things you got to do is make sure that you use language effectively. There's certain types of language that appeals to certain types of individuals. And if you can use that type of language with that type of individual, it will motivate them. So we've got to make sure we use that kind of language. For example, I'm going to talk about 4 personality styles a little bit later on, but one of those personality styles is what I call the heart personality. What they do is that they very much are into relationships, very much into family, very much into, being liked. With those types of people, I'm going to talk about, for your family, protect your family, this helps. I can walk with you down the path because that's the relationship. I can coach you. I can help you. We'll be there to support you. That kind of language is really going to help that person to realize the benefits of my products and services and to buy my products and services. Now, there's an opposite kind of person out there called the spade personality who all they care about is achievement and about result. With that person, and man, I'm going to talk about proven results and guaranteed and success, and with this you're going to achieve, and you'll be head and shoulders above everybody else. So I'm going to use words that really apply to those individuals, which means I need to become a wordsmith. I need to have a dozen words for each of the personality styles ready at my beck and command. And you can do that, by the way. I mean, you can become the master or wordsmith. And one of the ways you can do that is simply go to page 10 of the workbook. Page 10 of the Sales Code workbook talks about, proven words. And I didn't create these, by the way, guys. I didn't come up with them. They're done by, master advertisers, words that sell, words that influence, words that have an impact. So you want to start to use those kinds of words like excitement, can't go wrong, limited offer, logical, sounds good, don't want to miss out. Those kinds of words impact people. In fact, if I'm a telemarketer, I'm going to tear out that page and I'm going to post it right next to my computer screen so I can look at it and see it and remind myself, those are the kind of words that people like, and those are the kinds of words I have to deliver with respect to it. A master salesperson, a person that's really going for it in terms of becoming that 1% that's going to earn $250 a year or more, $250 grand or more, They're a master of the process. What I mean by that is, they have a system. They control the process. They manage their own emotions. They manage their clients' emotions. They have a whole series of questions ready at the beck and call to be used to deal with an objection or to deal with an issue. They have, 10, 15 objection-killing pieces ready to go from the get-go. So you've got to plan this whole process, and that's really where that 30-day plan comes in. In that 30-day plan, we're going to talk about features and benefits. We're going to talk about questions. We're going to talk about techniques. We're going to talk about incentives. But you've got to have that plan ready to go at a moment's notice. One of the things I've noticed about, for good professional salespeople is they use pressures or social pressure to influence people. What I mean by that is, they'll actually use something called the law of reciprocation. They'll use the law of reciprocation to get in the door. They'll use the law of reciprocation to build value. Maybe they're going to give them something. Whether that's a pen or whether that's a planner or whether that's a gift or whether that's, a report that you're going to bring in free of charge to give to that person. When you give something to somebody, automatically they feel obligated to give you something back. So reciprocation can be a great tool in terms of opening a door or influencing somebody or getting them to like us. I remember in the olden days, you'd walk through the airport and you'd have those Hare Krishna guys that would hand you a flower, and say, "This is our love gift to you." And then they'd say, "Would you mind helping us out?" And helping them out was giving them some money. And you'd pull out a $20 bill and you'd say, "Do you have change?" And they'd say, "No, that's okay. We'll just take it all." But what I'm saying there is giving, if you give, you shall receive. And that's in our culture. That's part of our psyche. So, give something to somebody else and obligate them to give you something back, whether that's time, a commitment, whatever it might be. One of the ways I open the door in a lot of cases is I give product away. I give things to people to take a look at. I can't tell you how many doors that's opened. I can't tell you how many times that has led to product sales, but it has. One of the things that you have to realize is that society pressures, are also things like endorsements. When you have a celebrity endorsing you, or you have testimonials from dozens and dozens of people saying that you're successful, that you've influenced them, or that you made a difference in their lives, that can be a great way to sell. So we want to get those kind of endorsements and testimonials all tied up, before we start the sale. So that can be a key piece for us to get going. There's the law of commitment and consistency. The law of commitment and consistency basically means, that once we buy into a small agreement, we're more likely to take it to the next level. So if I can get a person to say a little yes, then they're more likely to say a big yes. By the way, you might want to pick up, a book by Robert Cialdini. And Robert Cialdini in his book talks about, society influences, and literally has dozens of them. But one of the things I found interesting in that book was, they asked a group of homeowners, would you take a homeless man into your home? And the answer to that. Almost every single one of them, of 100, would say no. But what they did is they kind of sneakily came to a group of people, another 100 people, and said, "Hey, listen, are you the kind of person that's concerned about our society? Would you mind putting a little sign in your yard, saying that you're concerned about, society and helping other people?" And, when they did that, they got a good portion of the people say, "Yeah, you can put up a sign in my yard for that." And then they went back to those same kinds of people and said, "Hey, listen, you're the kind of person that said you were helping. You got a sign out front saying you're helping. Would you take in a homeless person?" And to the amazement of everybody, homeless people were in their houses. So when you can get a little yes, that can lead to a bigger yes. So keep that kind of thought process in mind. How can you get them to take a sample of your product? How can you get them to take a little yes, an appointment, a little piece of it that can lead down the road to something else? I got to tell you, when it comes down to selling, there's one thing more than anything else that gets them to buy products and services from you, and that's being liked. And getting liked is a whole skill set by itself. But when you're thinking about prospects and clients, what I want to do is I want to like them, because if I like them, then likelihood is they're going to like me. So I want, and people buy from friends, guys. So we have to make that person, whoever their style is, even though it may not be the person that we like, the personal style that we want, what we want to do is we want to become like them and get them to like us. So develop friendships as you're doing that. When I say develop friendships, there's little things that you can do, that can build friendships. I have a good friend of mine, James, and every time that he comes in, he always compliments something. He compliments my car, he compliments my house, he compliments my pool, he compliments something. And when he compliments me, it makes me feel good, about my choices, about what I did. And obviously, that gives me a good emotional feeling to begin the conversation. So, be respectful, be considerate, compliment people. Give free advice, give people premiums, give them thoughtful actions. Remember on special occasions, their birthday or their wife's birthday or anniversary or whatever it may. Stay in touch with them. It's not just about selling, it's about becoming friends. And in fact, if you can become friends with a couple of thousand people, you can be rich. So become friends. Develop that friendship as part of the sales process, and it'll go a long way to selling. Well, when it comes down to selling, hard selling, I kind of believe that there's a variety of different pieces you need to do. First, we need to have a fundamental sales process. We have to really build rapport, and there's a whole skill with respect to rapport building. We have to open the sales process. We have to use questioning techniques. We have to evaluate people's desires, needs, and dreams. And then once we do that, we have to present our products and service. Now, when we present our products and services, we have to be good in terms of gauging or evaluating, their body language and their acceptance. Did they accept our products and services? And then obviously as we're doing this whole process, sooner or later we're going to get a customer objection unless we deal with it up front. So we want to kind of deal with that. And obviously, as part of selling, you got to get it in front of enough people. So that means when you really need to talk about, lead development and management of time and those kinds of things. Let's talk about a couple of these different things. When we talk about some of the main pieces, the first thing that comes up is, how do you open a call? So with respect to opening a call, I kind of believe you can use open questions, and an open question is an open probe, what I call an open probe. So we want to get good at doing an open probe, and we want to make sure that we're listening more than we're actually talking. So good open probes are the why, where, how, where kind of questions. So we want to make sure we're using those kinds of questions. We want to have some controlling questions in case the call goes badly against us. So we'll talk about some controlling questions. We'll talk about some wounding questions because if the person is apathetic, we want to make sure we have some questions that we can actually use. Most of the times we have a purpose statement or a big claim. And that purpose statement or a big claim, can get us in the door. When I'm doing presenting from stage, I often call it the Bell technique. And the Bell technique, the first B stands for big claim. We want to make a big claim so that we can actually get in the door, so that we can actually present our products and services. When you're thinking about those kinds of things, one of the first things we need to do is to build rapport. So when you think about rapport, how do you build rapport pretty quickly? Well, one of the things you want to do in terms of strategies for building rapport is you want to convey the same values as your prospect. If you find that the prospect, important to them is success or security or health or winning or whatever it might be, and you can often get, tips from that by just looking around their office. If there's a pile of achievement awards on the wall, they're probably into success. If there's a pile of pictures of their kids, they're probably into their families. If there's fishing, and hunting, then they're probably into those kinds of things. And very quickly, you want to bond with them with respect to those values. If they have a dog, you have a dog. That kind of thing. Now, I'm not saying lie. I'm talking about if you have a dog, mention it. But I love pets, So let's talk about that. Look for common values. Look for common experiences. In fact, take it a step further. You want to evaluate this person by kind of sizing up their room or listening to them a little bit. But you also want to ask them questions. Ask them questions like, "Hey, listen, in the sales process, what's the most important to you? Is it the price? Is it the product? Is it the customer service? Is it the support? and an open up question. What's important to you? What you might even ask them, what their interests are, because I can tell you, with certain types of people, the relationship is number one. So you've got to spend that 10 or 15 minutes getting to know them, because if you spend that 10 or 15 minutes to get to know them, then literally they become your best friend and they'll buy for you and buy for you for a lifetime. Quite often, even though other people have a better price, because they like you, they'll keep you in the door. One of the things that's a technique in terms of rapport building, and I don't have time to go into it right now, but it's a great strategy, and it's on page 15, 16 is something called matching and mirroring. What I mean by matching and mirroring is, if you go into a situation where you're sitting with somebody, over time you will begin to match and mirror their gestures, their movements, and their language. And that we can actually use that as a technique, to match, that individual, because people like people who are like themselves. So a good example of that is, there's basically three types of people there's three types of thinking in the world. People actually see things, hear things, or feel things. And we usually have that's called a submodality, and we usually have a primary submodality. So if I come into a situation where I find somebody that's talking in a lot of C words, a lot of predicates that are visual, if they say, show me, illustrate it to me, immediately I change my language. I start saying, well, can you picture this? Can you see this? Is that image clear for you? So I changed my language to match their language, because I know that they're more of a visionary, a person that sees things in pictures. The same is true if I walk into an office or I'm talking to somebody on the phone and I hear them start using a lot of predicates that are things like, well, doesn't sound good, it doesn't ring clear. If I hear those kinds of words, I know they're a little more auditory in nature. In fact, typically their language tends to be a little more paced. It's not as fast as a visual person. So if that's the case, then I'm going to change my language to be a little slower paced, to be a little more direct, to be more concerned about the words, because the words are important to them. They actually want to hear things like, I don't want to miss a beat. It sounds good to me. So I want to modulate my language a little bit. Now I tend to be a little more visual paced. That's kind of why I'm faster paced. But the point there is I'm going to match my language. I'm going to match and mirror their language. And when I do that, I'm more like them and they hear me better. So then they see what I'm saying. So I actually want to do that. So we want to build rapport. There's kind of 20 plus things you can do in terms of building rapport and getting them to like you. I'm just going to run through a quick list for you. Certainly want to show gratitude for an appointment or an order. So maybe there's a small little gift that you can give them. Pass on compliments. Pass on compliments about them. Pass on compliments to their associates that get back to them. So you have an influencer influencing. Avoid controversial topics like war, politics, and religion, unless you kind of know who they are and what they're about. Show respect. Quite often be on time. Don't be late, guys. I like to get there 5 or 10 minutes early. I like to use their full name, Mr. James Francis, until I can say, would you mind me using your first name, Jim? And letting it come out that way. Make sure you compliment them. Make sure you're cheerful. You're excited about being there, about being with them. Never speak badly about the competition. You want to make sure that your product is head and shoulders above them, but you don't want to talk badly about what's there. Suppress anything that's negative. Sometimes when a client or a prospect is talking to you, they irritate you. They get you angry. I don't let that bother me whatsoever. If somebody gets angry at me, I let it slide. And what I do is try to figure out what happened, and how I can do it. So match their personality. Ask for their help. One of the things that's great is if you ask for help, people like to help other people. Hey, can you help me with this? Be dependable. Be honest. Praise their choices, their decisions. Respect their differences. Send a gift. Pass on articles. I love passing on articles and reports and websites of interest, just to keep things open. Be respectful of the time. And this is really important for that person who's a driver personality. You've got to be respectful of the time, because if you're not respectful of their time, that driver is going to get pissed off. So start to build those rapport things. Start asking the questions. When it comes to opening the sales process, I kind of believe in using questions to keep the conversation open and free flowing. What are some of those questions? Well, what are you looking for? What do you need it, and when do you need it? Who else is involved in the decision making? Where else have you been looking? When do you need it? Tell me a little bit about what you're looking for. Tell me a little bit about your buying procedures. What steps are you going to take to make this decision? Tell me literally what you want, when you want it, how you want it, and why. Tell me what we can do to kind of seal the deal. What is it that you want from us as a company? What is it that you want from our products and services to really get that? So we want to kind of open probe, or we use open probes to start the process off. Once we start to open it up, that's great, but sometimes when you're opening it up, you run into difficulty. And one of the things you want to do is, if you're running into that apathetic kind of individual, that person that doesn't want to open up to you, that person that's not forthcoming, the best thing to use is to use some questions, some controlling questions, to really uncover hidden desire, or hidden needs, or hidden problems. So you want to have a series of probe questions as well. What I call is, they're kind of wounding questions. Give you a good example. I used to be in the cable television business. In the cable television business, we'd come across people that said, well, they really don't need, cable. Don't need to have that special programming. So what we often would do is say, hey, listen, do you like all the commercials on TVs nowadays? Now, considering that the average program is like 41 minutes. That means there's 19 minutes of commercials, and nobody likes commercials. So I already know that that's the answer to that question is, yeah, I don't like it. And then I might say something like, hey, listen, nobody really likes commercials. If we were to offer a service that could give you great programming, that didn't have commercials, would that be of interest to you? Now, we already know we wounded him that he doesn't like commercials. So what's he going to do? Is he going to say, no, I lied to myself? One of the features that we have is, pay television that has no commercials. You don't want to go, into the video store and not get the movie you wanted. You don't want to be watching all those commercials, wasting time. So, you don't want to spend all that time traveling, and you can get pay television in the comfort of your own home. So, you're using a wounding question to lead directly to a benefit of yours, to kind of think it. Now, what that really means is we need to have wounding questions at our beck and command. So I'm going to ask you to stop for a second, maybe pause the video, and drop into the workbook on page 20. And on page 20, what I want you to do is to come up with 3 or 4 wounding questions, that can disturb your prospect, that can wound them, that is a problem for them, that is a problem for them, and you're going to actually use that if you run into apathy, or some non-responsive. Are you happy with this service? Does this bother you about that product or service? If you're like most people, this irritates you, doesn't it? Is this a problem for you? So what are some questions you can use to kind of wound that person? So that's, if we run into that situation where we're trying to do that open probe, we don't get a response to the open probe, so we're going to use some closed probing, some wounding questions to kind of open the door a little bit so that we can get into some of our features and benefits side of the fence. Quite often as well, when you're thinking about opening the call, we typically try to have something called a purpose statement. Now, what I mean with a purpose statement, it's actually to control focus and direction. So quite often what I'll do is I'll use a purpose statement to kind of lay out the path for the direction of the call. And I might say something like, I'm here today to kind of, show you the path to financial success. And is that something that's of interest to you? What I'd like to do is offer you the best deal in town. I'm calling you on this time period to actually double your sales results in the next 30 days. So I'm going to use a big bold statement, a purpose statement, and the bigger the better for me. You got to obviously make sure it's true, but you want to make a bold statement to capture their attention to move things forward. So you might want to drop into the workbook on page 21 and just kind of build your own purpose statements, so that you can open the call, so that you can build that. We can also use purpose statements that are kind of tied to the 4 personality styles, and who they are. Well, we'll talk about that a little bit later on, not for now. Once we've gotten some questions, we've got some open probe questions, we've got some closed probe questions, we've got some purpose statements, we're really going to get into, the pitching side of the fence. And the pitching side of the fence, is introducing our products and services. Now, to do that, we should do a whole section on features and benefits and the 10 emotional motivators. So I'm going to kind of leave that alone for a minute. We'll come back to that a little bit later. What I want to talk about just for a few minutes is talking about some questions that can help you, since we are talking about questions in terms of the whole sales process. First, there's controlling questions. And a controlling question really happens when you want to move the person in your direction. So there are things like when you say, are you interested in ABC? Do you want in a product or service Z, Y, and Z? Which would you prefer? Would you prefer the service to be 24 hours, 7 days a week, or just Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m.? Have you considered this kind of product as a solution to your problem? Do you like either A or B? Right? So a controlling question is just questions that move people into the direction we want to use in terms of it. So we use controlling questions to really control their direction or control their focus. Other types of questions we're going to use in terms of the sales process are test questions. And what I mean by that is you want the client, the prospect, you want to be checking in with them every once in a while. And when I say every once in a while, I'm thinking every 3 or 4 minutes. So I mean, does that sound good? Are we on the right track? Is that okay? What do you think? What do you think so far? Are we good, or is it great? Do you like that? Do you want to hear more? Right? Do you want to hear more? In my seminars, I often say, hey, do you want to learn more? And the answer to that is yes. And obviously, down the road, I'm going to be using some questions there. As we use some of those questions, what we're going to do is we're going to come up with some needs and some desires. And when we use those questions, those probing questions, those open questions, we're looking for what they need in terms of a product, and you want to come up with 3 or 4 things that they absolutely need. By the way, you probably want to know that before you go into it. So, for example, if I'm talking about wealth, well, I already know that they probably need to improve their credit. I also probably know they need to learn some strategies with respect to real estate investment. I also probably know that their stock strategies aren't working, and they need to have some better stock strategies that are going to get them better rates of return. Maybe 50 or 60 or 80%. I'm also going to know that those are important, but they're not the critical decision makers. The critical decision makers are going to be the top 10 and their own personal desires. So I'm gonna know that going in, which means I'm gonna know what the top 10 are. I'm gonna know what the personal desires are of the top 4 people, the 4 social styles. And then I'm gonna sell to emotion and not sell to logic. So I'm gonna make sure that I know that going into the situation. Let me give you a good example. For a couple of years there, a few years there, I sold a tax product. The tax product was a good product. I mean, it reduced taxes. It had a 30-day plan for success. It had a manual filled with 44 plus tax strategies. There was a monthly newsletter that was packed with changes in the tax law and updates. There was a 2-year deduction review where we showed people, based on going past their past taxes, that they could get back some of their money using a 1040X kind of thing. But when you're thinking about taxes, that's kind of a dry kind of piece, right? So if you just simply do features and benefits of your products and services, hey, it reduces your taxes. There's a manual. that's not really what people want. What they really want in terms of desires, man, is they want wealth. They want to have enough cash to do what they want, when they want, with whom they want, as much as they want. They want freedom. They want freedom, not be locked to the job, not be, having to work 40 hours a week for 40 years, only take a 40% pay cut. And they want family security. So I know that those are some of their desires. So if I'm selling, I'm not going to sell to the reduction. I'm going to sell to desires. In fact, I'm going to sell to the top 10 motivators or top 10 desires. And those top 10 desires, just so you know, not in any particular order, are protection of my family, financial freedom, improving my health, getting sex or having sex, or thinking about having sex, achievement, peace of mind, the need to be right, personal security, adventure, excitement, and acceptance, acceptance generally. So when I know those kinds of things, I actually need to take my product, and tap those personal desires, and tap those personal top motivators, to sell to them. So let me just give you an example. And if you want to follow on, you can drop onto page 31 there in your sales code book. But maybe what I'm going to do is, let's talk about the top 10. If I'm trying to sell a tax product, that 30-day plan, that's going to improve it literally save them, somewhere between $200 and $2,000 in the next 30 days. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make statements. Hey, listen, with Tax Connection, over the next 30 days, you can save $200 to $2,000. And I imagine that's going to give you some security, in terms of having some money. Then you can maybe take that money and put it into an IRA for your kids, and it can build over time with that savings. I can actually say something like, hey, listen, with that $200 to $2,000 in the next 30 days, hey, maybe you can plug that into your own tax savings plan, and we know that if it's earning 15% a year, in the next 25 years, that's going to represent, over $500,000 in your nest egg. That's going to build your wealth substantially just based on saving that $200 to $2,000 a month. Maybe I'm going to say, something like, hey, listen, with the savings, you mentioned that you were concerned a little bit about your health. Maybe you can join that health club. And you can obviously, the point I'm trying to say there is I'm taking the tax piece and I'm actually tapping it more into, that top 10 emotional pieces and the top 10 desires. If the person was more of a diamond personality or an expressive personality, they like to have fun. So I'm going to say, hey, listen, with that $2,000, what are you going to do? Are you going to maybe take a vacation on the beach, with a certain loved one? Are you going to do some wild and crazy kind of things? What are you going to do with it? So obviously I'm not selling tax. What am I selling? I'm selling emotion. So I'm going to use the logic of the $200 or the $2,000, but I'm going to paint the picture, and make sure they see or hear or feel the picture of protection of the family, of financial freedom, of building wealth, of peace of mind, the need to be right, not make the wrong decision. Whatever that might be, I'm going to build it. Now, what that literally means for you is, we need to sit down and we need to do a features and benefits statement for our product and service. So, on page 32, you can drop in there and see your features and benefits. But then what I want you to do is to write what I call an enhanced benefit or selling to desires. So let's take that basic feature and benefit, and turn it into the top 10 emotions and write, what that basic benefit means, the saving of $2,000, what that means in terms of family, wealth, health, being right, security, whatever that might be. So we want to build that in terms of our piece. Once we start to use these statements, we need to gauge whether or not they're accepted or not. And when you think about getting accepted, how people gain acceptance in terms of accepting your products and services or the benefits of your products and services or their dreams or desires, they do it through different ways. Certainly they get it through, acknowledgement. They say yes, they agree with you, but you got to watch their body language to see if they're accepting. If they're nodding with you, they're definitely in agreement. Now, if you kind of see that they're not in agreement, then we need to bring out the hammer to get them into agreement. So what are what's the hammer that can actually help us in terms of gaining agreement frames or gaining agreement for our benefits, gaining agreement for our statements about desires or the top 10? Well, certainly they can be letters and testimonials from existing clients. They can be a list literally of our existing clients and who they are. They can be physical demonstrations. There's nothing better than showing somebody, how to do it. I had the privilege and pleasure to go to the first World Internet Summit, and one of the guys there, Ted, who was one of the creators and founders, invited me there. Just happened to bump into him on an airplane going to Australia. It was pretty cool. But one of the things they did at that Internet Summit was they took somebody out of the audience, gave them a product or service, and started marketing with the person. Within 48 hours, the guy had made money, literally thousands of dollars, that he got to keep, in it. And what that did is it definitely proved the system, and the response to that in terms of sales was incredible, because people saw somebody in the audience make money and literally following, 10 steps, and following the 10 steps you can make money too. That was a great piece. It was a great physical demonstration. Physical demonstrations work. Give them samples, give them guarantees, give them client references. Let them know what your professional designations are. All those things help people sell or get acceptance. One of the important pieces is obviously a call to action. So we have to have a call to action. A call to action is always be closing, which is meaning using test questions and taking steps further. But a call to action can be other things as well. Maybe it is handing them the order form, the order form close. So we want to give them the order form and get them to start filling it out. That can be a simple way of closing. In fact, I always have an order form when I'm at the back. The other piece is maybe giving them an offer or something that's unique today that they can't get. In fact, that's one of my favorite things to do. It certainly gets the diamond personality, the expressive personality excited because they're getting something that somebody else isn't getting. It can be good for the achiever as well because, they like to get something that somebody else didn't get. Maybe it's a story. I love story closes. Story closes for me, they're kind of like fables. And people buy into fables. They start listening to the fable, and they start identifying with the character. And when they identify with the character, they follow them down the path. And anytime we do a call to action, we always have to be ready for objections. So we want to use a series of techniques to deal with objections. And in fact, a couple of strategies just real quick when it comes to objections are be planning for them. If you know that the major objections are time and money, then you need to have a system ready to deal with that major objection. One of the things I do when I hear an objection for the first time is, just so you know, is I totally ignore it. Because I know 80% of all objections are false. Now, that's not disrespectful to the other person. I just know that if they're serious about it, they're going to bring it back up. They say it's too expensive. I just totally blow them off like I didn't listen to them and just keep talking or keep doing my presentation or keep asking questions or asking for the order. Because I know that 80% of all first objections are false. And if it is a money objection, it's going to come back to them. So I mean, there are some things you can do with respect to objections to deal with them effectively. This session was just basically to give you a beginning piece about what are the important pieces of a sales presentation. And what I'm going to ask you to do is I'm actually going to ask you to go into your workbook. And when you go into your workbook, I literally want you to start to fill out the pages, the exercise pages, going through page 20, all the way through to page 59. Or even further than that if you want to get through the closing pieces. So let's work through the workbook to start building our features and benefits and our desire statements in terms of the top emotions and tapping them, over the next 30 days. This is Jim Francis saying so long for now. I'll see you next time.